And we're going to learn the tshuva of the Igros Moshe. Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of his most famous tshuvos in the Igros Moshe, issues a similar reading to the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish had said that if there were government oversight that milk from a non-kosher animal is not going to be added, and that the companies get a harsh penalty, then that's a leniency where we said that the Jew doesn't have to see the milking. And the Igros Moshe issued a similar ruling, but adds a different basis for it, which he claims would be accepted even by the Chassam Sofer and those who argue with the Pri Chodosh regarding remember the Pri Chodosh said if non-kosher milk is not found in the vicinity, or it is found but it's more expensive, one need not prohibit milk by a Gentile where a Jew did not see. According to Rav Moshe, when one is certain, due to government oversight, that no non-kosher milk was mixed in, it is permitted according to all, due to the concept that definitive knowledge is considered in halacha as equivalent to visually seeing something. Nevertheless, he writes multiple times that a person who is a Baal Nefesh, meaning someone who is scrupulous in mitzvahs, should be stringent and only drink Chalav Yisrael. It says, Uvidvar Chalav shel companies b'mdinaseinu. The milk companies in America, Asher yesh pikuach hamemshala, where there is governmental oversight, the FDA, the USDA, im yarvu chalav behemoth tmeya ye'anshu, that if they mix milk from a non-kosher animal, they would be punished. The gam yazgiru et ha'isek shaleh, they would close their business. Shalachen vaday mirtetu mila arev, they would certainly be afraid of mixing. So yesh tam gadol lahatir av below shitas ha-Pri Chodosh. We could be matir even without relying on the Pri Chodosh. Mishum da ikar. The idea brura hu k're'iyah mamish. That's the concept. If you know for certain, then that's like seeing. Which is the sugi in the Gemara Shvuos. The Zeru gather anan sadi. We say we are witnesses. Shematzinu barbei mekamot. That anan sadi, that's like a vadai. And for example, when you have edim or standing outside the yichud room, all they saw was the yichud. They didn't see, but it's treated as if kiroa be a mamish. It's as if they saw relations vadai. V'nasa eishes ish gemura af l'chayv misa lahavi aleh. And she's treated like an eishes ish. You're only an eishes ish if she had relations. That's how the nesuin is finished. Yet someone who has relations with her is put to death based on these adim. So this is his example of that anan sadi will work as a vadai. Lachein b'cholav she'asru rak b'chol v'agoy, milk that is asur not because there's non-kosher items in it, but rather because the goy milked it. Ben Yisrael roehu yesh lahatir. Gam b'Yisrael yoidin yidibru the havi kariyah. We know because of these side issues like governmental supervision, it's considered like a Jew seeing the milking. And that v'zesh im yarvu yanshu, if the companies know that if they mix non-kosher item there, they'll be punished. V'tzarchu lizgor ha'esek shalem, they'll have to close their business. Shu arvacha shel kama alafim, this is thousands of dollars. V'amemshola mashgechas aleihem. Uvada yediyah brura. Shehi k're'iyah. It's like re'iyah. Shelo haya bichlal isuram. This was never what the Chazal intention was when they asked her. V'lachein I wrote to lismoch lahakil yesh lo tam gadol v'rashoy. Whoever wants to be soymech and to be mekel, has a big reason. adds the Igros Moshe. Kimoshe Mekilim B'Zeharov Bnei Adam Shomrei Torah. Go look in the street. Again, remember, Rav Moshe was writing in the 50s and the 60s. He said, look, most Bnei Adam or Shomrei Torah are Mekel. V'gam Harbe Rabbanim. V'chas v'sholom loymer she'oisin sheloi kedin. Avu mikol mokom lebalei nefesh. He says, for someone who wants to be machmir regarding mitzvahs, min haroy lachmir. Ve'ein b'zeh mishum yehura, and it's not that you're showing off. He says, Kach ani noeg lachmir la'atzmi. I'm machmir myself personally to only drink Chol of Yisrael. But Misha Rotz Lahakel says Rav Moshe who also Kedina, Ve'en lachshiva k'mezalzel b'Yisrael is not considered as if he's mezalzel b'Yisrael. That's the famous tshuva of Rav Moshe regarding milk. And he repeated it in a later version. Uvifrat l'gabi mischar shel alafim. Again, this is not a local little farmhouse with a goy milking, 3 cows. This is, $1,000 million company. Shavare bishvil mirted midinei hamamshala, because of fear of the governmental laws. Af bishvil onesh kot lo ya'ared. Even for a small fine, they won't mix. Ubiprat shem yavor eza panim, if they'll do it multiple times. Says Rav Moshe, Vada yichu mehem a license. Their license will be removed. He will be forced to close their business. As you do many cases. If the government finds a company and they continue doing the thing, license, then they take their license. Which ends up closing the business. We're not saying this by ourselves. The fact that these people are afraid to mix, and there's no profit in it, and it says that we can make the same calculation. The first tshuva that I published, Unachona ubrur. Rav Moshe says that was a correct, because people challenged big time this leniency of Rav Moshe. So Rav Moshe, he doubled down. He says it's nachona ubrura. Avavade lebalei nefesh menaroy laachmir ve'im b'zeh mishum yorah kedachtav tisha. So the Mishnah Halachos, Rav Menashe Klein, elaborates on this question as well, and concludes that one cannot be lenient about this based on numerous sources and considerations, some of which are quoted below, and relates to the point of the Chassam Sofer and Aruch HaShulchan, that he felt would not agree with this based on numerous sources and considerations, some of which are, okay, that's a repetition. He felt would not agree with this leniency, despite Rav Moshe's claim that they would. Some of his other considerations include that he feels the classic commentators on the Shulchan Aruch hold fear is not a sufficient reason for leniency. Rather, the presence of the Jew is required so he can see that the Gentile is not tricking him in any way. In addition, he discusses the considerations that he feels that the factor of fear cannot be applied to Isrim as well, as the fact that the law does not require an ingredient that is less than 2% of the total produce to be disclosed in the ingredient, which he says is true for milk as well. He says the other poskim, such as the Chelkas Yaakov, that's Rav Breish. Rav Breish was our cousin, lived in Zurich, and was a major posek. He was like Rav Moshe in Europe. He also was more machmir and did not use this leniency. Says the Mishnah Halachos, Ra'iti lidididi nafshi, my great friend, Agon Amuvik Rav Moshe Feinstein, B'shut Igros Moshe Yoredeya, Sheyatzel Ladun B'Davar Chadash. He came out with a new ruling it's a real novel. The Achol of Abama company shall goyim, that milk that comes from big companies like Knudsen or Carnation or whatever the big milk companies were then, Asher yesh pikuach hamemshal aleim, that the government is watching over them. If they mix pig's milk, and shuotam, the gamulai yizgurata asik shalom will close their business. If they'll be afraid to mix, said Rav Moshe, Yishtam God lahatir cholav goy. Ela the be'emet divrei agon zatzal l'fi aniyut daiti tmuin meod. The Mishnah Lochais finds Rav Moshe's words to be difficult to understand. There's no question that these Rishonim and the Tur Shulchan Aruch and the Shach and the Taz v'od, the Cholav Goyim Nesra B'minyan, that when Chazal answered Cholav Goyim, they did it like as a bezdin. And then you have a concept that even if later on the situation has changed, where the reasoning given by the original bezdin is not there, you cannot remove the gzeira unless you have a bezdin greater b'chochma u'v'minyan than the earlier bezdin. And we have many gzeiros like this. Yayin Nesach. Today, Christians don't use this wine for idolatrous practice usually. So the reasoning given for why we had Yain Nesach doesn't hold. But since the Gzer was done, as a Sanhedrin Dikad or Beis Din Dikad law, you can't override that. Because we certainly don't have a Beis Din greater the Chochmah of the Minyan than in the time of Chazal. So the Cholav Goyim Nesra Binyan K'moshe goes with some Soifer Zal, the Imkein Elano Shum Heter. Afilu Neda B'bir Gomer She'en Kan Cholav Tamid. Even if we know for sure there's no non-Jewish, non-kosher milk there, we cannot override this gzeir because technically it's a gzeir we can't override. Moshe obviously didn't hold that the gzeir was established. There are shittas that hold, not like these achronim that the original gzeir was made that way. And that's why the Pri Chodesh, L'dasa Poskim, the Sfir L'Lahatir, the poskim that were more lenient, like the Pri Chodesh, the Afilu Yoshev Yisrael in a roa, but the Ofen Sheyochel, but he had a potential, Kenatat. It was still set up so that the Jew has to be somewhat close. Sheyeh be'ofen sheYisrael yuchal lirah al kol panim. Ayin Aruch HaShulchan and Nizker le'el, look at the Aruch HaShulchan, which we learned, Mashiachim Ma'od, Dismarmer al Achron God Lechon. And he was concerned about the Achron who was more lenient. There's no chance that there was non-kosher milk there. The Aruch HaShulchan said it doesn't make a difference. That not because of the leniency of having the Jew there, but rather the Cholav Lo Nesra B'minyan, Perush. Hagzer shegoz Chazal al Cholav Goyim eina nechsheves k'gzer shel bezdin. The Radvaz and the Pri Chodesh held that this Gzeir of Cholav was not a Gzeir that was instituted in Bezdin. Therefore, to undo it, you don't need a greater Bezdin. Says the Minchas, Mishnah Lochos Mikol Mokom, Ike Mishum Hadekaz of Chasam Sofer. The Nimtzo Kolo Chumro. The kula ends up to be a machmer. Kiven de be'emet medina lo nesra b'minyan. That even if you're going to say that this was not prohibited through Bezdin, afilu hachi in higu avuseinu kol bnei Ashkenaz. A minig established in all of Europe. The Gabi they Sfard be'emet nami noagin de lo kapri chodesh, and most of the Sfardim also don't accept the leniency of the Pri Chodesh. Not to drink any milk that a Jew didn't see. So what happens now becomes like a neder. You have a minig that everyone has accepted. It's like a neder. You can't be matur that. So uve'emek higamagon Rav Moshe Knira, the rock advinasuno soshan, his modesty. Obviously, he understood that many Jews were drinking chol of goy. He wanted to be mezakev them, so he strenuously tried to find a heter. Kosh because of bits fro. Ki if shashar bin they Torah filim arabonim sheshosim stam chol oivrim kulam beisr b'shlo kedinois. It can't be. Began ba'atzma because of shu shoyse rak chol of Yisrael. V'chein omerli mefurish. Rabbi Klein says that Rav Moshe told him specifically that a chol of goy does not go into his house. Lo minei v'lo miktasu, not never. For armored halacha she'en moisra atzmo aleh, a halacha that a person himself doesn't keep, kloimer she'eno osa k'sokwe and miskayemes, will not remain. So he's pretty strong against Rav Moshe. The Yalkut Yosef also agrees that ideally one should be stringent, but then he states that those who live in the Golus, where it's difficult to obtain Chol Yisrael, may be lenient. Yesh omrim, the B'mokom she'en chol of tomim matzui. They're in places where there isn't really pig's milk or camel's milk, like in America. O she'en kedayos mascharis l'shaveh chalet. There's no profit motive in it. Minig asfarim la'atil l'shtos chol shechol b'god b'pumbi. And the minig of Sfardim is to permit milk by goy in public. V'yesh cholkin, v'chenikar lahachmir. Yeshomim sheba'artzo shekayim be'em choka oisel la'ariv sugi cholav zeh b'zeh. He says that in those countries that have a governmental body that prohibit mixtures of milk, after lishtos cholav goy, you can drink it. Shagoy choshish mila'ariv cholav tamim cholav tor. He's concerned. V'yesh cholkin. That's the Mishnah's Yaakov. Chalkas Yaakov as well. They won't rely on that. They also consider that this is the type of gzeira that was made by a bezin, so you can't be mevatel it. Try not to drink chol of goy. Except if you're sick or for children. But somebody who lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's hard to be machmir. They can't really find Chol Yisrael. If they're going to rely on the makilin, they have someone to be soimechad. Even when you're not sick. Lubavitcher Rebbe forbade drinking regular milk entirely due to the spiritual damage it causes. Masha Kosov Odos Avrechinei Mashamarti Lo Binogel Chalav Goyim, who al pi sipra yadua mikvod kodsho Mori V'chami Avnei Morain Rabbeinu, the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe. Shecholav Goyim Ma'oris Fekos Bemuna. By drinking milk that was milked by goy, it creates doubt in faith. Allah has come people who learn in a university was probably asked by a student where there's a mixture of good and bad. The Dailach Hakim, he doesn't go into detail. He says, whoever understands what I'm saying understands, meaning Taruvas Tovura, we live in America, it's good, but it's also bad. You should not drink this kind of milk because it'll only increase someone's doubt in faith. So it's like, this is a machshava concept. However, other North American poskim were lenient, as Rav Moshe. Rav Chaim Jakter cites Rav Menachem Genak, who is the CEO of the OU, as reporting that Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the Rav Yosef Ber, was lenient on this issue for three reasons. The first two are those of the Pre-Chodesh, Nigris Moshe. And the third is the fact that all milking is done by machine nowadays. And the halach of Cholav Akum doesn't apply by machine. It's well known among Rav Soloveitchik students that the Rav drank packaged milk that did not have any special rabbinic supervision. Rabbi Genak mentioned in the Shir Yeshiva University that the Rav told him that there exist three considerations to be lenient. Number one, if there are no non-kosher animals found in the herd of animals that is being milked, Ein bedru tame. Many opinions rule leniently. Second, we may rely on the government, the USDA supervision and inspections to ensure that the milk we consume is from cows. Number three, technically the rabbinic edict forbidden drinking milk from an animal that was milked by a non-Jew does not apply, since today the Jews are milked by machines. In addition, other great American poskim, such as Rav Yosef Eliyahu Henkin. Rav Henkin was the posek in America before Rav Moshe. The Ezra's Torah were also lenient for the same reasons as Rav Moshe. Many Golos residents today are lenient about this and drink regular milk, termed chalav stam, based on the positions of the poskim noted above. This is also the position of the OU and many other diaspora kashrut agencies, though by no means at all. And there are quotes, there's footnotes below if you want to see more footnotes. However, chalav Yisrael milk is now more easily available in many places, and the number of people who are machmir about this has steadily improved. The Rabbanut, in Israel, the Rabbanut is stringent, and all milk available today under certification is chalav Yisrael. It is interesting that camel's milk can actually be obtained in Israel, as well as some places in the Negev, which is an important consideration for maintaining a chalav Yisrael standard. Aside from this, camel milk is also sold in a number of other countries, including Australia, a number of countries in Africa. Countries where it's permitted to sell non-kosher milk may not be covered by Rav Moshe's ruling. I don't know about France. I remember France used to have also different standards. They would use all sorts of different products. I don't know about today. Okay, what about powdered milk and dairy ingredients? Another subcategory of cholav akum that is discussed by the Achronim is powdered milk. Even if one takes the position that cholav Yisrael is required or recommended, does this apply as well to powdered milk? The Chazon Ish held that it has the same status as the milk itself. He explains it the same way that one can dry kosher milk, non-kosher milk can also be dry. But the halacha of cholav akum applies in both cases in the same form. Avkat chalav, which is dried milk, eno inyan l'gvina v'chama. It's not comparable to cheese or butter. The gvina nasa yidei aprashat hamayim and agush. Cheese is made; they separate the water from the whey. V'afrashazu nasa yidei chimutz. This is they add, fermentation. Shenosim bachol. V'chema butter is nasa yidei tnua v'nadun shel chalav. It's you churn milk in a churner. You move it. Or it's heated, in order to coagulate the fat that's dissolved. Non-kosher milk cannot become butter, cannot become cheese. So therefore, you don't have to be concerned regarding butter and cheese that they were made from non-kosher milks, because they won't curdle in the same way. But dried milk, it says dry. And it's just moisture that gets dried. You're left with the dried milk. So what he's trying to say, the Chazon Ish, is you can dry anything that's moist. So even non-kosher milk can be dried. Or that it was mixed with something non-kosher. So although the Chazon Ish holds that powdered milk is called regular milk, in practice the Chazon Ish permitted actual chalav akum as well, where there's government oversight, and the companies would not mix non-kosher milk due to fear of penalties or the business being closed. So he would have had no problem with powdered milk. On the other hand, Tzvi Pesach Frank was completely lenient regarding powdered milk, even for those who only drink chalav Yisrael, since the concept of powdered milk was not included in the original decree, and especially since today there's government oversight. And it's the same opinion of the Tzitz Eliezer, the Kan Aaron, and the Dvar Yoshua. Says the Shut Har Tzvi, with Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, was the Beit Din HaGadol, Rav in Yerushalayim, passed away maybe in the 1950s, maybe in the 1960s. He ruled on a lot of the rulings in Sahal and in the modern state of Israel about electric plants and was a major posek in Israel in the mid-50s, in the mid-century, last century. Now, we're going to learn very soon that even though we prohibit cheese made by goyim, and shamida basovim or beprochim, even if they didn't use rennet from the lining of the stomach, but they used like grass, kosher things. And so it means even though we aser cheese, no matter what, how it's made, even if it's made with kosher products, because of a different reason. But that ain't any dun domeh. It's not comparable to dried milk. The vadek vina shenesra b'minyan shach loimer lo polak v'asura. That there was done b'minyan in a bezdin, and its difference a low plug remains prohibited. We cannot undo it. Af b'chi hai gavna. The tam eser but that means even if the reason of the eser goes away, we can't override it because we have no bezdin greater b'chochma of the minyan. So here, l'chora by gvina, as opposed to where we see that it was a controversy by milk, looks like everybody accepted the concept that when Chazal did the Gvinas Akum is prohibited, it was done in Bezdin. But Vafilu, she does like Kesef Mishnah. The Gam Chol of Neser B'Min Kamo Gvina, Rav Yosef Karo held that when the Chazal answered Chol of Akum, they also did it B'Minyan, and therefore you can't override it. Therefore, you can't buy milk by a goy to make cheese from it. Ochema, even though you're going to make it, with non-Isser products. He himself has to make a differentiation. Of course, you can't buy the milk from a goy and make butter. But the Isser is only on milk. If the goy makes butter, you can buy it from him as long as it was kosher ingredients. There was no prohibition made on chema akum, only on cholav akum. Imkein. Those that permit butter of goyim, it's been converted from milk to a different entity. And therefore, the prohibition of cholov has disappeared. Those people, it'll be logical to say, you can use the same svar but dried milk. This shinui, this change in the mitzias from a liquid to a dry product. So the gzeira's cholov also pokabimen. The gzeira of cholov akum is left it. The gzeira digvina lo nechlat's not included in the isser of cheese. Dried milk is not cheese. It's kemochema umela deshari lachilis Yisrael. So it would be permitted for a Jew to eat it. There's no catalyst, a prohibited catalyst, like the stomach lining of a cow, which we're going to see is going to play a role in cheese. That's not required in dried milk. Or kemochema, it's like cheese that doesn't have a catalyst. So therefore, dried milk was never in the original gzeir of chalav, the low gzeir is gvina. It was not in the gzeir of cheese. There's no concern that non-kosher milk was mixed k'moshes bor la'el. Because the goy is not going to mix it because he's going to get closed down. There is no pig's milk or camel's milk. And there's going to be a financial penalty. This is purely permitted. Makes no sense for us to make our own zayim. Also pretty strong words. According to Rav Frank, powdered milk is similar to butter, which many permit, though not all. Rav Heinemann has an article about it, in that the form has changed from natural milk. to dried, and that the prohibition of chalav akum is removed. He combines that with the consideration that today there is not usually concern for not kosher milk being mixed in. Therefore, powdered milk should be permitted.
Ernie, I'm not getting what the distinction. Well, once you curdle the milk and becomes butter, what changes that suddenly it's not considered?
No, because the gzeira was only made on milk, not on butter.
And powdered form of milk was never around in probably in ancient times, or in times of Chazal.
So in a Hanami, that's why there's a debate whether powdered milk is in the So the Chazon Ish said it's just exactly like milk, and you see that Rav Pesach Frank doesn't agree. He says you dry it, it at least changes from a liquid to a solid, and therefore that would be a reason to remove the gzeira from it, because it's a tzura acheres. So it's machlokas achroni.
What about makabel? What about makabel tumah? If you change the form from milk into powder, does it go? The kabel tumah go off?
No. But the dried milk would still be makabel tumah on its own, independently. If it was the milk and then you change it, that's a different question. Whether you change it, you want to say if you have something that's tumah and you change it. We know if you have a kli that's tumah and you break it, so it's not makabel tumah anymore. You're talking about a food that's tumah and it changes its format, so it's possible that it's possible. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. I would say if the food becomes not roy la'achilas kelev, then it's not oichel anymore, and then it would lose its tumah status. Here it's still roy la'achila. And certainly dried milk, if a sheretz fell on it, would make it tameh. You're asking a different question. You're asking if the milk is tameh as a mashke, and now what happened? This is Dr. Agustin.
That's a mistake.
What was that? Okay. There's wrong number.
Why did you pick it up?
Because if I don't pick it up, it interfered with the Zoom.
Got it.
You remember what happened to us on that other thing?
Yeah.
The test?
Get it.
Now you see how this works. On that competition.
You're in the middle of the show. It's being taped.
Okay. The Yalkut Yosef also holds that according to the strict letter of the law, one may be lenient, but you should be stringent if possible. Avkat chalav shel goyim, shema'arvin b'shokolad, and for example, let's say the milk was, you're talking about milk by goy. It's not chol of Yisrael, and they make chocolate out of it. So they use powdered milk there. As long as there's the hechshem rabbanut, right? Meikra din ein b'zeh isra mishum chol of goy. He was asked if you eat milk chocolate that's been made with chalav shel goyim, is that an isra? They make the dried milk from dried cow's milk. He says you should be machmir even for children. Materna, which is, I guess, machal tinoket, it's baby food, which I guess was dried formula, right? Anasa betarus avos chal shel goyim. I guess there's powdered milk in that, which is not the chal of Yisrael. Mutter litna l'tinok, you can give it to a child. They make this milk out of cow milk. Materna. If you have formula in hechsher mehudar, if a proper hechsher, miyod tov sheikne materna mehechsher. But sheyev shar shalakel b'nekel b'materna. However, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu was against any leniency regarding powdered milk. And the Minchas Yitzchak, the Dayan Weiss, was the same. He says we should push aside the leniencies. Since the dried milk was prohibited when it was chalav, He says, how does this go away? You see, Bernie, there's a machlokas achronim regarding whether change in form is going to change the mahus of the Isser. You see plenty of poskim that says it will, and you see plenty of poskim that says it won't. Ayin b'simin tzadik zayin, l'gabi psak hashulchan aruch she'ein lasim isa b'chala. Listen to the proof he gives here. We learned together that you're not allowed to make milachtik dough, right? You can't break milachtik bread. So you can't make your dough with milk. The imlash kolapas aser. Let's say you did put milk in your dough. It's prohibited to eat. Afilu loch lavada. Let's say you're just going to eat the bread by itself. This bread is aser dika bread. Ve'ebi shama pischei tshuva. On that piece of Shulchan Aruch, the Pischei Tzurba says, he brings the Chavis Das, shekasav she'ein moal asiyah shina b'pas la'achar afiyah. It also doesn't help the fact that you took the dough and you baked it into a bread, and so it's a different mahus, kilshono, v'gam hashinui ein a moal. Rakish hashina b'shas afiyah. Rakish hashina b'shas afiyah. Lo haya alav isur klal. If you make a shinui, I guess remember we said if you change the shape of the bread, then it's permitted. Therefore, lo haya alav isur klal. Aval asot shinui acher. No, achar shekvar nasa ein a moel. But once the thing has become prohibited, a shinui does not change it. So Rav Mordechai Eliyahu wants to use this as a raya that once something is osir, a shinui doesn't change it. I mean, I don't necessarily, I could see a reason not, because when we make the dough with milk, it's prohibited. But then when you bake it and you make a shinui, it's permitted, right? You could, if it's shaped like a triangle, we said you're allowed to eat it. So this poka iser, I'm not sure I understand Rav Mordechai Eliyahu's proof from there. He tried to bring a proof. I don't see it. It's important to know that this question is relevant not only to powdered milk, but also to any dairy product with dairy ingredients made from milk produced by Gentiles, including dairy chocolate, pudding, yogurts, cakes, cookies, all dairy ingredients. So this machlokas of powdered milk, you were probably all scratching your heads and going, who uses powdered milk anymore? But you see, the powdered milk is put into many ingredients. So this machlokas is very relevant for us. So in North America, it seems that many of those who drink only Chalav Yisrael milk are not lenient concerning powdered milk. In Israel, although products with a Mahadrin certification will not include powdered milk for dairy ingredients, many dairy products with Rabbanut certification do include dairy ingredients. And those who accept Rabbanut are lenient about this as well, though actual mechanisms are always Chalav Yisrael. So,
Ernie.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the main reasons they use powdered milk is because of the weight. To ship liquid milk is extremely heavy. So the powder is so much lighter. So a manufacturer, in order to save money, they would receive the powdered version, add the water to it to save on the shipping costs. That's a big consideration.
Does that have to be when you buy milk in the store? Does it say reconstituted with water? Are we buying dried milk?
The bakeries and candy manufacturers.
But not milk. When you buy milk.
No. But for bakeries and candy manufacturers, because they're shipping so much, they would ship a powdered version and then add the liquid as necessary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you see why we spend a lot of time on powdered milk, because of all the ingredients that include the powdered milk. But it's, so you've seen all the sides. We've seen all the sides here. There are those that are matir and there are those that are machmir. Okay. Gvina sakum. Cheese made by a Gentile should be permitted, since it's not possible to make cheese out of non-kosher milk. Non-kosher milk it's very interesting. Only milk from kosher animals can be made into cheese. Cows, goats, sheep. You can't buy any other cheese. You can buy goat cheese. There's certain French cheeses made out of sheep. There is no cheese made out of, because non-kosher milk cannot be turned into cheese. The way it works, etc., it doesn't happen. So technically, cheese made by a Gentile should be permitted. So you can't have non-kosher ingredients there. But it's different. The sages made a decree regarding cheese. In the Mishnah of what is Amar Rabbi Shal Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yoshua, why did they prohibit cheese made by goyim? Because they use the stomach lining of a cow, an avela cow, wasn't right? Chazer Amar Lo, he answered, no, it's because they used the stomach lining of a calf that was used for avodah zarah. Well, things that are avodah zarah are asur bana, not just asur b'achila, but this is not. So he sealed over acher. So he didn't answer, but he changed the subject. Now, my time, why did he change the subject? Because this was a new decree made by Chazal, and therefore you can't challenge it. My gazrisa. So what is this? Why did they make this gzera to prohibit goyish cheese? Mishum nikur. This is because they were concerned that a snake deposited its venom in the cheese. And goyim didn't watch their cheese very well, so it's mamish for sakana. There's always going to be a few drops of non-kosher milk there because it's made by goyim. They're fine. The cheese is going to be made from, let's say, cow's milk, but they've got other milk there. So there's some splashing of non-kosher milk on that cheese. That's another reason. That they use the agent to curdle the milk to make cheese is the inner lining of the stomach of a nevela animal, which is prohibited to eat. Forget about basar b'chalav. It's not basar b'chalav because it's already asur einus or chalalisr. There's a huge piece in Shulchan Aruch on that, but it's certainly asur b'nevela. So that's the Gemara. How did the poskim paskin? So the Rambam in Macholas Asura says Gvinas Hagoyim Muteris. She'ein chala be'em atmei mizgabein. That means from an Ikar Adin, cheese made by goyim should be permitted because it cannot be made from non-kosher milk. But in the times of Chazal, the writers of the Mishnah, they made a gzeira that you should not eat goyish cheese. When they kill an animal, they don't do our laws, and therefore it's always an avela. And therefore they make their cheese using that product, and therefore it's also the imtar valo or akeva dover kotnu ad ma'od b'cholav sha'amad bo. Now you're going to say it should be batul barov. How much of the enzyme do they need compared to the massive amount of milk? It's certainly less than shishim. I mean, they're certainly greater than shishim against the catalyst. The lama yuvatel b'miyuta. Why shouldn't there be bittul barov? Not barov b'shishim. Mibnei shuamai midas agvina v'oil v'davar aser shuamai midarei hakolosu. So, gentlemen, if you remember when we learned about taruvis, there were some exceptions to mixtures. We said davar haroy liskabe. If you have a piece of something that's a very fancy piece, afilu be'elef lo, if you have a piece of steak that gets mixed up with even 1,000 steaks, afilu be'elef lo batel, because it's a piece of meat davar haroy liskabe. We talked about a beria, a whole creature. Even if it's one against 1,000, afilu be'elef lo batul. So davar hamaimid is another category, a catalyst. So yeast, when you're making, if it's yeast of truma, so afilu be'elef lo batul, because the whole thing doesn't start without the catalyst. So here as well, says the Rambam, even though it could be, we could use nullification, you can't because it's a davar hamaimid. But cheese that the goyim used, grasses or fruit, going strafa to any like sap from figs, vareni korn bigvina, and it's recognizable that this cheese was made with this kind of fruit, therefore that it's not a prohibited item. Says the Rambam, hoiru miktas hagonim she'asura, even though technically the products are kosher, the Gonim said it still remains prohibited. Whether the catalyst was something prohibited. The whole gzeira was originally because they reminded of davar aser, and does make it, it's a low plu. So according to the Rambam, even when it's known that cheese was coagulated with permitted ingredients, it is nevertheless prohibited due to the principle of low plu. No distinction is drawn. That's the Rambam. Tosfos, on the other hand, hold that if it's clear that it was made with permitted ingredients, it would be permitted. Says Tosfos Navodah Zarah. Many places they eat goyish cheese. They use flowers. The gam gaone narvona, right? Narbon. Hitiru otam bimkoman mitam otam beprochim. They use kosher rennet. The Shulchan Aruch rules, like the Rambam, that all cheese are forbidden, even if the coagulating substances is kosher. Venus avikechavim, asra neshmamidim osam beorke vashkitosam shinavela, vafilo emidu basav masura. Says Haggah, says the Ramah v'chinam minig ben liprot together. So even though sometimes the Ramah will follow Tosfos, here he doesn't. Here he's machmir like the Shulchan Aruch. So based on these sources, it seems that all cheese made by Gentiles is forbidden, even if they're entirely kosher, which is more stringent than kol vacuum, concerning which you have seen some are lenient due to government supervision. However, the poskim discussed whether soft cheese, such as cottage cheese, were included in the gzeira. The lenient opinions, such as Rav Moshe Feinstein, hold that since these cheeses do not need to be coagulated with an external ingredient, but can coagulate by themselves, the decree was not enacted against them. We saw very clearly that the decree was enacted because of ora keva shemamidnoso. So if making cottage cheese does not require a catalyst, then there was no gzeira against it. Says the Igros Moshe and Cain, Yeshtam Gadol Shrak Agvino Shetzrichim Le'ez Amada. Only those cheeses that need a catalyst. Ach b'makam amada b'or kevas mamidim b'prachim. Even though if you switch it to fruit, so bezeh pligi algon in arvona v'asri, people still prohibited mishum sheshachlu ligzor mishum amandim b'davar aser. There was a gzeira that if you permit that, they're going to permit even the prohibited. Says Rav Moshe, aval gvinot levanot, white cheese, like cottage cheese, cream cheese. She'ein tzarach lamada minatinas eza davar klal. The ma'atzma mu'amadim b'meshach hazman. They become this way because they stand there for a while, or micham hamakom, or because of the heat of the place. He says, "Einam b'klal iser." That part of the iser gvinas akum, kivin shloshayich bu agzeira. Mishum ha'mamidim b'davar aser shehu inyan gvina acheres. It's a different cheese. Shlo dami lo b'tam lo b'marav lo nesr modem. This gentleman is why. This is why. Anyways, the Aruch HaShulchan. So that's why people relied on Rav Moshe to eat cottage cheese and cream cheese and sour cream, and as long as it had a hechsher that there were no non-kosher ingredients, we relied on this Rav Moshe. But the Aruch HaShulchan ruled that soft cheeses were forbidden if made by a Gentile. Or gvina pshuta shalano, or our simple cheese. So Aruch HaShulchan was machmir. However, the position of the OU and many other diaspora kashrus agencies is to be lenient about soft cheese based on the position of Rav Moshe as well as Rav Henkin. Says the OU kosher staff, what kind of cheese must be Gvinas Yisrael? Common practice adopted by many kashrus agencies based on the Igros Moshe and approved by Rav Henkin is to follow the opinion that the Gzeira of Gvinas Akum was only declared on hard cheese, as only hard cheese is used as rennet to form into curd, and was therefore subject to the prohibition. Soft cheese, such as cream cheese and cottage cheese, also called acid-set cheese, does not need rennet to coagulate, as it can acidify and form on its own, and such cheese is therefore not subject to the rule of Gvinas Akum. Nevertheless, there are Chashulchan Chachmas Adam. Remember, the Chachmas Adam was the Chai Adam of Danziger, who many of us used to follow before the Mishnah Berurah. People used the Chai Adam; they used the Chashulchan. Seems to all that even soft cheese is subject to Gzeira of Gvinas Akum. Okay, listen, very good.
So where does butter fall into all this?
Butter, we said, was also not a problem because once they make it, the Gzeira is on milk, not butter. And it won't form butter with non-kosher items. It's got to have a hechsher.
What?
It's got to have a hechsher, but it doesn't fall under chol vacuum. It's like vina.
But
That's look at the Shudhart Tzvi on 124.
okay, but with a carton and cream cheese, does it need a hechsher or not yet?
No, when they need hechsherim for ingredients, but it's not but if it's owned by a goy, like they don't have to turn on. It doesn't have to be owned by a Jew. Gvinas Aku means the company is owned by a goy,
Right.
or it's milked by a goy,
Right.
and there was no Jew watching it.
Okay, but
That's
talk about
the status of Gvinas Aku.
cream cheese.
There's no supervision. That's the whole concept. The Rav Moshe's chiddush was there's no Jews watching milking plants. But because the USDA watches them, now, our milks have hashgacha because we want to make sure they don't add other ingredients in the milk. But it's not usher midterm, it doesn't have a din of chol akum. It does have. It doesn't have a din of chol akum because it's as if a Jew watched it, because the fear of the loss of their license, it's so great. That was his novelty. That knowing for sure is like Re'iyah, and it's as if a Jew watched it. Mm-hmm. And it's like Kol of Yisrael. But cheeses, we said, the soft cheeses do not follow the category of Gvinas Akum. Hard cheeses do. That's why you see we don't buy non-kosher cheese. We only buy ha'olam, and there is no. It's not. But for example, you buy Nutz and cottage cheese as long as it's got no U. Because it's not owned by a Jew, and there's no prohibition of Gvinas Akum. If you held like the Aruch HaShulchan or the Chachmas Adam, you wouldn't be able to eat Nutz or Philadelphia cream cheese. You'd have to buy a Chol of Yisrael product. And those people who follow the Chachmas Adam and the Aruch HaShulchan buy whatever that thing we buy on Pesach. What's that?
J&J.
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 Right. I'm just saying,